All right, guys, welcome back to the Goals.com podcast, where we uncover what drives sales performance at the highest levels. Today, we're joined by Steve Margerin, president of Margerin Associates, a sales leadership consulting firm that helps small and mid-sized businesses reduce uncertainty, reignite stalled revenue, and build sustainable systems for growth. With over 25 years of experience across strategy, operations, marketing, and sales, Steve has guided countless organizations through transformation, helping leaders take control of their revenue engines, rebuild confidence in their teams, and reignite performance through clarity and structure. Today's conversation is all about momentum, how to rebuild it when it's lost, sustain it when you've got it, and lead your team through the inevitable ups and downs that comes with selling in constantly changing markets. Thanks for being here, Steve. You ready to dive in?
I am. Thanks for having me, Andrew. I'm excited. Let's do it.
You help companies reduce sales uncertainty. When you step into an organization that's struggling, what are the first warning signs that sales performance has gone off track?
Yeah, the real first signs probably happen 2 years before I get the call. But there's some things that are pretty clear indicators, right? Things that I see are large performance gaps for us in the sales game. I've been doing this for a while, right? The haves and the have-nots on a sales team, and then the turnover that inevitably happens from that kind of stuff. That's usually an early sign that you're headed for, either a brick wall or a steep downhill climb, right? The other things are, CRM utilization. So I'll see very poor or no implementation or utilization of our CRM. That will lead to trouble regardless, and it often leaves things hidden. So you'll have things like phantom pipelines, right? Where, at the beginning of a quarter, it looks like it's going to be a great quarter, and then poof, right? The pipeline just kind of disappears. And you can see those things by asking the right questions or having a CRM that identifies those kinds of activities and the progression of activities. Typically, I don't see that. When I don't see that, we're heading for bad places, right? But overall, I think the morale and turnover are the pieces that really identify the depth of the problem. Right. If I'm walking around the sales bullpen or on a call and I'm hearing folks talking about problems and not talking about wins and progress, I know that there's some sort of disconnect, right? There's some sort of clarity missing and engagement missing on the sales team. So yeah, I mean, what are the people talking about? How are they acting? What's the morale? What's inside the CRM? Do we have a balanced bell curve of performance, or is it big gaps? Those are clear indicators something's going on, and maybe it's a brick wall coming at you.
Yeah, all great points. Many leaders assume they have a sales problem when it's really something deeper. How do you distinguish between a sales issue and a sales strategy issue?
Yeah, great question. And we can loop back to our conversation a few moments ago. The idea of morale tells a lot about an organization and what that morale looks like. But the other components are goal and execution clarity. I talk a lot about clarity in my consultancy with my clients. And does the sales organization have a crystallized goal of what they're waking up in the morning to do, right? Is it very clear up and down the sales organization what that vision of success looks like? And this is where clarity makes a big impact in understanding what they're running at, but also it's a leadership issue, right? So, I could coach sellers in a sales team or a sales manager all day, but if there's not a clear definition from the top of the organization down of what we're running at, what success looks like, you're going to miss engagement, right? And those are things that are not solved at the team level. They're solved at the strategic level. And you start digging into things like execution metrics and success ratios inside of the pipeline. Our sales development efforts turning into meetings, right? Our meetings and conversations turning into proposals, right? Are we having good value props? And are those leading to good wins? And the ratios inside of that will tell you something, right? If we're getting great meetings and never getting a proposal, it's either skill around our value prop or We got a market fit issue that we got to figure out, right? And those are strategic issues, right? We could have the best salespeople in the world, but if they're selling something that nobody wants to buy, it's going to be a tough road.
Amen. You've led several turnarounds for underperforming teams. What's the first mindset shift a company needs to make to get back on track?
Yeah, mindset shift. The whole thing is a mindset shift, right? I'd say the game of sales is about mindset shifts and paradigm changes, right? On a regular basis. I haven't met a great salesperson or a great sales leader who doesn't have this growth mindset and developmental mindset. But really, for the businesses that I work with, we have to define the size and the depth of the problem first, right? Is this something that we can solve or improve through some incremental changes? More often than not, by the time I get the call, it isn't, right? And businesses sometimes will underestimate the seriousness of the underlying issues causing poor performance or underperformance. And so if it's truly a true turnaround, right, versus incrementally improving performance, I got to know, and I can ask some simple questions by, what have you tried already, right? You have a problem in front of you. What have you tried already? And if they say, this, and this, I'd say, okay, we have, not only a strategic and leadership issue, but we probably have a mind shift that we need to have, right? We need something drastic needs to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to solve this not through incremental change, but by some sort of significant change that is either a leadership change or a complete retooling of how our sellers go about their activities every day. And that goes back to the clarity, right? And setting those crystallized goals. I will guarantee if I talk to a leader and ask, what have you tried so far? And they list more than a couple things, I'll guarantee you that if I walk through the sales bullpen, I won't get the same answer as to what the organization's goal is. The alignment and clarity will be completely off. Yeah. So, if it's a true turnaround and leadership doesn't have an answer, then we got to recognize it's a sinking ship, right? And something significant needs to change. And typically the old more, better, faster, right, execution mantra, right, doesn't solve the root problems. They're typically leadership problems or cultural problems that execution discipline, while certainly important, but in and of itself is not enough to make a lasting change, right? So, if we're not focusing on incremental efforts, they certainly can temporarily improve results, but we need to take a step back and say, okay, we need to significantly change something here to have sustainable success and not just temporary wins.
Got it. Margerin Associates focuses heavily on building and implementing effective sales infrastructure. What are the key elements of a healthy, scalable sales process?
Yeah, there are several, Andrew. So when I think of sales process, I think that's one component inside of the larger idea of infrastructure. And so infrastructure goes beyond, just a sales process, but, we certainly look to, evaluate and redesign and implement repeatable systems with, with some great tools and resources we get from Sales Acceleration. I license with Sales Acceleration, great tools diagnostically and resources for defining and solving sales problems. But there's really 6 core areas that I look at when I'm defining sales systems and an infrastructure. We're talking about this idea of vision and goals we talked a little bit about, and how that aligns with compensation. So I call it vision, goal, and compensation alignment inside of a sales organization. Revenue planning and forecasting, right? How do we understand what's to come? The metrics and having some sort of success transparency, super important. Again, on that idea of alignment, and now we're publishing and having transparency on our success or where we're missing, that helps with that alignment and clarity. And then sales strategy, go to market, obviously, to our conversation earlier, right? If our folks are out there pounding pavement and it's just not hitting, it's not landing, we need to take a step back and say, are we addressing the market correctly? Do we have the words right? Are we saying the right things? I would say, what are we saying to whom and about what? Right.
Oh.
So what are we saying and to whom and about what? So, are we targeting the right folks? Do we have the right value propositions for those folks? And is our product hitting on this market, right? Is there a good market fit? And all of those things need to work together for a good go-to-market and sales strategy. We talked about sales process and Here I start looking at a CRM very heavily, right? Do we have CRM clarity and implementation that drives our sales strategy and our infrastructure plan? So, we could define a great sales process, but if our CRM doesn't match up to that, the daily activities that the salesperson are doing are in disconnect with what we're saying our plan is. So having that alignment, and then obviously sales leadership and reporting is kind of the sixth item for me. And this is an area I've spent a lot of time with. We talked a little bit about the importance of sales reporting transparency, but I'll take it one step further. And I think too often I see organizations misunderstanding or having incorrect perceptions about the sales department or the sales engine. Right. And it's kind of an age old, kind of conversation, right? We just need them to sell more. And, the organization for sales is looked at kind of like a black box, right? Where, I don't know what goes on over there, but I know that we need more coming out. Right. My ideas around sales reporting is we want to communicate what's going well and what's not, but also providing factual and data-driven information to the rest of the organization to eliminate the perceptions or wrong assumptions about what's going on inside the sales organization, because those kind of things just cause dysfunction. And then when it comes to sales leadership, right? I mean, I've developed, over the last few years, a pretty solid and definitive sales leadership system. And, when we're talking about the sales leadership, the firm needs a good system that is reliable and can deliver consistent results. And we owe it to sellers to deliver that as well. So I talk a lot about, kind of the core management cadence components. And I'll go through them real quickly, but there's 7 of them, right? And in no particular order, but, the performance dashboard, again, transparency, business reviews, right? How's the seller doing? How can we support them? Are they meeting objectives? Account strategy sessions. How can we be proactive and strategic in winning deals and having more wins? One-on-one coaching, obviously regular basis. How can I help this seller do more with less time, or manage, administrative challenges, or train for better sales results, right? The sales team meeting is obviously a component inside of the leadership system. A specific training and development component, different from the sales team meeting. You'll notice those are 2 in my book, because those are 2 activities, right? Targeted and structured skill development drives improvement. And then finally, territory and assignment reviews along with quota setting, right? And those are the 7 kind of core activities or components of a strong sales leadership system. And so all of those things are infrastructure, right? We have to assess kind of all of those pieces and triage where we're going to get the best bang for our buck in a short period of time to make a turnaround.
A lot of value in all those points. Thank you. You mentioned that your goal is to help leaders regain control of their revenue engines. What does control look like in a well-run sales organization?
Yeah. And when I say control, I think a better way to say that is confidence. Oftentimes I hear from folks I work with, it feels chaotic. I don't know what folks are doing. And often that's an infrastructure problem. We just talked a little bit about infrastructure, right? They're missing one of or several components inside of a good sales management system. And that leads to this uncertainty, right? This idea of, I don't have my hands around this thing, right? And I don't know how to make it better because of that. So yeah, I mean, really, when we look at a well-run sales organization, we're looking at those components of infrastructure along with the good hiring and good onboarding, right? If you put those 3 things together, you're going to have better control, or I'll say more confidence in what your results will look like in the future. And I think, as you get more sophisticated in developing the right sales leadership systems, you get to stretch your planning horizon a little bit, right? And that leads to even more predictability, or at least proactiveness in being able to address problems that I foresee because I'm looking at the pipeline today. I need to solve for something that is going to happen 9 months or a year from now before it's too late. We're often leaders, when I'm originally talking to them, they're like, I don't know about next month. And I'm like, next month already happened in my world, right? And people have been in sales for a while, I mean, if you don't know what's going on next month, right, unless it's a very, very short sales cycle that you're working with, you're already behind the curve, right?
Yeah. I agree with that. When you talk about transforming growth channels, what does that look like in practice? And how do you help teams identify where to focus first?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways to look at growth channels, right? There's distribution and distribution channels, direct, dealer, right? Those kinds of strategic conversations and where we're going to get our best bang for the buck. And in their book, The Science of Scaling, right, the authors talk a little bit about how powerful going with a channel model is and how powerful working with distribution networks can be as opposed to building a direct sales team internally. It just scales better, right? And for some of my clients, that kind of model may make better sense, either entirely or a portion of the business. So there's a little bit of strategic decision making there to understand what's our best lever for growth, right? What's the lever that we can pull that's going to be most productive? And when I say transforming, right, that moving from one of those models to the other or some blended is a challenge, right? That's a challenging, large scale kind of problem that needs wisdom and thoughtful approach, and it happens over time, right? And then when we're talking about just specific growth channels, like we have maybe an organization that has a new business development team, right? That's responsible for driving net new business. And then we also have an account management team that's responsible for growing existing business. That's a fairly typical model. And what I often see is that there's some movement that we need to make between those team members to really make that make sense, right? If we have an organization that's struggling on either one or both of those areas, typically there's a shakeup that needs to happen to have both of them make sense. Yeah, I mean, this is one I could talk about for a long time, Andrew, as you know. But transforming growth channels is a strategic conversation, and then it's about the sales leadership system to drive that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. You've worked
Yeah.
across multiple disciplines, from finance and operations to marketing and sales. How does that cross-functional experience influence your approach to leading and developing sales teams?
Yeah, alignment across functions is important for any organization, right? And, having sat in seats in various different departments, it gives me perspective, maybe a little bit of wisdom, but it helps me understand how we can align to have each function achieve goals, or at least understand what those are, you know, including sales. Revenue health is foundational, right, to any business. And in most cases, it's either number one or two in organizational imperatives, right? We must hit this revenue growth number or all is bad. And so knowing that leading a revenue organization, I have that kind of influence behind me, or I can share that influence or share that idea of influence with folks that I help. That makes it much easier for me to be able to tell that story to other departments, right? Quick story. I took on the leadership role temporarily in an organization, really bad morale issues, and a lot of departmental conflict. Typical organization, right? You got finance, you got sales, you got operations. And operations and sales were frenemies, if that makes sense, right? Uh, I live and this was in Minnesota, and in Minnesota, it's all about the passive aggressiveness, right? So there
Yeah.
was no throwing stuff at the cafeteria or anything, but there was certainly this underlying conflict and tension. And so several things we did to kind of improve that morale and that culture. But one of the things that I remember very distinctly is I separately had meetings with the entire operations team, the entire sales team. And it wasn't the topic of the conversation, but we got to the point of talking about, hey, what's going on with sales? It seems like there's some conflict and we can improve, we can improve some relations, and oof, the floodgates opened, right? And I remember the operations team, and you've heard it before, right? It wasn't new to me. The sales team makes so much money, and for as much money as they're making, they should be able to, submit the TPS report or whatever the piece of paperwork was. And so it was about these process issues, and it came down to they're making so much money, they barely work, right? All these misnomers, right? It's just false. But there's this perception, and it was kind of fun because I explained, well, here's the job that they're doing, and I talked about the the emotional component of sales, right? I mean, sales folks wake up every day and they have to decide whether they're going to be successful or not that day, right? They don't get the same paycheck just by punching a clock, and there's an emotional toll of that, and that's the reason most folks either don't want to get into sales, so they can't do it, or don't do well after getting into it, is this emotional toll, right? They have to literally, you can't, it doesn't matter if you take a vacation, doesn't matter if you have a sick day, right? Your income is based on performance. And so regardless of how much time you spend at work or not at work, that kind of hourglass of monthly quota or quarterly bonus or whatever it is still ticking away. And in talking with operational folks, it got real quiet in the room, right? And then I just finished by saying, hey, by the way, we are always hiring in sales. We need some great sales folks. So I am looking for folks. If this is something for you, I mean, you're right. I mean, some of our sales folks make a lot of money and there's a lot of opportunity, but is anybody interested? Dead quiet in the room, right? Just dead quiet. Nobody wants to do that job, right? They're in the right seats. The operational folks were in the right seats. They didn't want to do it. Never heard any of those stories again. I never heard those complaints again after that meeting. We closed that meeting by saying, the only way we get out of this is by driving revenue, right? And so any way you can help these folks who are challenged, right? Emotionally, time-wise, spiritually, right? I mean, and they have tough jobs, right? If anybody wants to sit down and make 50 calls to prospects, we're hiring, right? Any way we can help them, we should. And I encourage everybody to think that way, right? And I said it more eloquently at the time, I think, or not, maybe just my memory of it is real flowery. But that organization was ranked 20 out of 23 units in the organization, in the broader organization. And 3 years later, it was ranked number one. And ever since, it's been ranked either number one or number two in the worldwide organization. And it was not because they didn't have great people, and it was not because we didn't have great products. It was because they needed to be asked to do more, right? And to rise up and help each other out. It didn't help that they had 5 leaders before me, right? So again, leadership issue, right? Yeah. So a leadership issue, when you're turning over your leader, it's not going to bode well over time. So yeah. So when you talk about this growth and mindset, I especially, at the senior leadership level, that's what it's all about, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. The old Peter Drucker line.
Yeah. Sounds like you did a fantastic job resolving those cross-functional issues. You've said that history has wisdom. How can leaders use past data and experience to better navigate future sales challenges?
Yeah. If you've led sales teams for a while or have been in the game, right, there's some common patterns that emerge across all components of the revenue engine. And your first step to making any kind of improvements or navigating future challenges is being able to diagnose correctly. And folks that are really, really good sales leaders can almost do it in their sleep because it's second nature, right? But it requires the experience and dare I say, wisdom, to use your terms, to be able to connect some of those dots, right? And us folks who've been doing this for a while kind of take that for granted sometimes because it's very clear to us. But for somebody who hasn't spent time and have experience at various levels of leading sales teams, it'll look like magic, but it's not. And there's some, we talked about it earlier, there's some pretty clear components that if you keep your eye on the ball on these 3 or 4, you'll understand and have kind of predictive analytics of where your business is going, right? We talked about the, what I call the execution ratios, right? How over time is my pipeline driving through the business, right? How are we guiding that prospect through their customer journey? And any little dip up and down over time tells you something, right? Maybe it's an activity issue. Maybe there's changes in the market, but those are indicators to dig deeper. And we could have a whole conversation about what that looks like. But when we understand our pipeline and have wisdom about patterns, we can very quickly identify it doesn't sound like our value prop is resonating with our prospects like it used to. Let's dig into that, right? And that's CRM work, right? If you have a good CRM that's focused on goals and has clarity around goals, you can very quickly dig into your ratios and say, hey, something's changed over the last month, right? I'm going to go sit down with my entire sales team and just do a check-in and see what they might have to share with me about what's going on out there. Cause they'll tell you, right?
Yeah.
But that's really about having seen these kind of things before. So you can certainly look at your data, but if you don't have the experience or, wisdom, to use your terms, to understand what you're looking at, you might miss those patterns. So that's why it's super, super important that companies have some deep revenue leadership experience in their organization or reach out to others for it, because they could be walking by opportunities every day. And it's extremely challenging to be able to define the right path and diagnose correctly after encountering a speed bump of some sort, right? Trial and error is risky and expensive.
I know of a CRM that focuses on goals.
It's funny because as I was thinking about our call, I was like, gosh, I'm such a CRM guy and you know that, right? But, we'll just make it a plug for Goals.com because I love it, right?
Just joking. Many companies have great salespeople, but lack a cohesive sales culture. In your experience, what's most important when it comes to building a high-performing, motivated team?
Clarity of goals, clarity and alignment on goals. If you have morale issues, sometimes I call morale issues clarity issues or lack of vision issues, but clarity and alignment will drive more energy and engagement in a sales team than anything else I've ever seen. When we all know what's in front of us and what we're running at, when the team has a shared vision of what success looks like, when we track these objectives and have clear understanding of when to celebrate or when to adjust, that's real clarity that allows people, what I say, kind of take the handcuffs off and go run and do it, right? Here's the 2 or 3 things that are super important. These are the things that we're going to look at every day that we know move the needle. There's other things that are important, but these are the 3, right? These are the ones we know are going to drive the business. And I'm going to ask you about every day, maybe 2 or 3 times, right? Certainly early on, it'll be 2 or 3 times, right? But as we're driving that culture of high performance and driving engagement for, passionate sellers, that's the number one, right? If everybody is super clear on what they're running at, and we have a team that we've developed, right, that align with that goal, not everyone will buy into my plan, right? And I know that, right? And that's just leadership. Some will, half-heartedly buy in, and that's okay as long as they're heading in the right direction. And some folks, this isn't the place for them. Not good or bad. It's just, hey, this is what we're running at. If that's not you, I get it, but this is what we're running at, right? So more than anything, clarity and alignment on goals and what success looks like.
I love it. For the business owners tuning in who might be feeling stuck or uncertain about their sales results, what's one practical step they can take this week to start regaining some momentum and confidence?
I'm going to dovetail right off of our conversation, right? If I know that driving clarity and alignment delivers results fairly quickly, a little exercise that I give some of my clients and some of my advisory clients, clearly define your sales goals and objectives, or I'll say your revenue goals and objectives, like your real ones, not the wish we could do this or something written on a wall or something that was in a business plan, but with the real ones, right? What are the absolute imperatives that you need to hit, and start at the highest level possible, right? If you're a business owner, start at, we need to grow to X revenue by 2030, right? Whatever the highest level that you can think of, and follow that all the way through down to the daily sales goals, or daily activity goals of a seller. And I always say, do it on one sheet of paper. If you need more than one sheet of paper, you got to keep working on it, right? You don't have clarity yet if it's more than one sheet of paper. And really cut through the fluff and what is truly important. Focus on those few critical objectives and activities that we know will move the needle, will drive success. And less is more, right? If I can drive success with, a mantra that only has 2 bullet points, that's much better than one that has 5, right? That's a much cloudier message. Clarity and alignment we just talked about, that will be the biggest benefit to a business owner that's not sure where to go and not sure of the next step. That'll immediately create some clarity. And then you have the opportunity to, go out and have those conversations, right? Take that list to your team and socialize it, gain some buy-in, refine it, and create a mantra, right? Wish I could think of a great one right now. I'll think of one probably in a couple minutes, but I like to create kind of funny socialized mantras around whatever our objective is, right? 2 meetings a day keeps the doctor away, right? Those kind of things, right? And kind of campy and kind of fun, but it makes it a much less painful conversation to poke somebody to get some meetings on their calendar, right? Yeah, I can be walking through the bullpen and I say, "Hey, Andrew, man, don't forget, right? 2 meetings a day, keep the doctor away," right? If that person's not doing something, they're going to be, yeah, oh yeah, ha ha ha. But they're going to immediately go, shoot, okay, yeah, you're right. I don't have to today, right? I need to go look at that. But there's that crystallized vision to start with, right? He or she is not going to say, I think it's really 1 meeting. No, we're past that at this point, right? We've created the mantra. We know what those objectives are. We have clarity. We have alignment. Go get it, right? And then finally got to measure it, right? So get that clarity for yourself as a business owner, push that out to your team, get that buy-in, maybe adjust a little bit if there's some good feedback, but then double down, triple down, and quadruple down on it, right? Create a mantra and measure it and publish it consistently. Don't talk about anything else, right? That's clarity, that's engagement, and that's how you drive momentum.
I love it. All good stuff. Steve, thanks so much for sharing your experience and your insight with us today. If your organization is ready to take back control of its sales engine, build stronger teams, and reignite stalled revenue, connect with Steve on LinkedIn or visit Margerin Associates to learn more. Thanks for tuning in to the Goals.com podcast, where we explore what drives top sales performance. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with a fellow sales leader or business owner who's ready to level up their game. Until next time, stay focused, stay driven, and keep setting goals. Steve, once again, thank you so much.
This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.